hand. Jack Kiley, before turning private eye, a copper in the Met, and briefly a professional footballer, has never set foot in a novel, nor do I think he ever will. As I see him, he's best suited to the short form. Quick, generally small investigations, in and out. As a writer, and a bit of a crime fiction aficionado, well, I was, Kiley gives me the chance to hark back to Hammett and Chandler, Ross MacDonald and the rest, letting him loose, angry and incorruptible, in the mean streets of Kentish town. When Kiley's in his office and a woman's footsteps are heard approaching his door, you know things are going to get worse before they get better. These are the stories I think Jim Crumley would have liked best. Short stories can also be invaluable for the opportunity they provide for trying out characters and situations you're unsure of, walking them round the block, as I believe Elmore Leonard once described it. I wrote Karen Makes Out, Leonard said, to see if I'd like Karen Sisko enough to develop a novel around her as a federal marshal. Clearly he did, and Out of Sight was the result, first the novel and then the movie. Frank Elder first saw the light of day in Due North, and went on to be the main protagonist in 3 novels, Flesh and Blood, Ash and Bone, and Darkness and Light, while police officers Will Grayson and Helen Walker, who make a belated appearance in Snow, 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 on the trail of a prolific hitman who has so far eluded capture, handled most, but not all, of the detection in Gone to Ground and Far Cry. Tom Whitemore, the leading character in Sack o' Woe, one of the most recent stories included here, had a walk-on part in the 3rd Elder novel, Darkness and Light, and I remembered him as someone I wanted to return to. Now that he's been around his particularly difficult block a little more, who's to say he won't appear again? Drummer Unknown, which, as was pointed out to me, is the only piece I've written in the first person, was a relatively early attempt to write about the world of London's Soho between the late 50s and the mid-60s, a world of jazz clubs, street corner vice and petty crime, some not so petty, and a particularly British kind of bohemia that I skirted round and began tentatively to explore in my late teens and early 20s. The 2 stories towards the end of the book, Just Friends and Minor Key, take this further, both revolving, as they do, around a central group of characters who might, one day, be dealt with at fuller length in the novel set in and around Soho I've been threatening to write for so long, neither my editor nor my agent believe I'll ever actually do so. The stories are there, though. They're among my favourites in the collection, and the characters are starting to take shape, so you never know. It's true to say that all of these stories exist because someone asked me to write them. Seba Pisani, for instance, one of my Italian translators, and organiser of the rather wonderful blues and fiction festival Dal Mississippi al Po, wanted something for a series in the Italian newspaper Il Giornale, hence Ghosts. My publisher in Finland, Otava, requested a Resnick piece to distribute at the Helsinki Book Fair, thus, well, you needn't. Certain editors and compilers of short story collections have been assiduous and kind. Maxim Javakovsky, Otto Penzler, Robert J. Randisi come immediately to mind. Without them, this book would be a meagre thing indeed. Ross Bradshaw, at Nottingham's 5 Leaves, has been a consistent supporter, as have Ed Gorman and Martin Greenberg in the States. But perhaps the final thank you, on behalf of so many writers of crime stories, as well as myself, should go to the estimable Janet Hutchings, editor of Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine, who has published many of my stories through the years, filtering out most of the extreme profanities, but leaving the heart intact.
Sack o' Woe. The street was dark and narrow, a smear of frost along the roofs of the occasional parked car. 2 of a possible 6 overhead lights had been smashed several weeks before. Recycling bins, blue, green and grey, shared the pavement with abandoned supermarket trolleys and the detritus from a score of fast food takeaways. Number 34 was towards the terrace end, the short street emptying onto a scrub of wasteland ridged with stiffened mud, puddles of brackish water covered by a thin film of ice. January. Tom Whitemore knocked with his gloved fist.